There's a fight brewing between Massachusetts Republican Senator Scott Brown and his most likely Democratic opponent for the Senate next year, Elizabeth Warren. It all started on Tuesday when, in a Democratic debate, Elizabeth Warren was asked by a young Republican how she paid for college. The questioner then reminded everybody, including her, that Scott Brown had posed nude for Cosmopolitan magazine to pay for his law school.
To help pay for his law school education, Scott Brown posed for Cosmo. How did you pay for your college education?
I kept my clothes on.
I kept my clothes on. Well, yesterday, Scott Brown was asked about the exchange in a radio interview. Let's listen to that.
Have you officially responded to Elizabeth Warren's comment about how she didn't take her clothes off?
Thank God.
Thank God. Anyway, later, Elizabeth Warren responded to his statement. Let's listen to that.
What do you think about this thank God comment?
You know, I'll survive a few jabs from Scott Brown over my appearance.
Do you think he should apologize?
I'll survive.
Wow, and the Boston Globe reports that Brown went back on radio last night to say his earlier statement on Warren was a joke. That's what he says. So in a competitive race, does a back and forth like this help either candidate? Susan Milligan has covered Massachusetts politics for years. She writes for U.S. News and World Report. David Corn's the Washington bureau chief, of course, for Mother Jones. And Alex Wagner is an MSNBC political analyst. I want to start with Susan. Who's won this thing so far, this little back and forth about making fun of somebody's physical appearance, saying it's a joke? She didn't exactly start it because that Republican youngster started taunting her. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think if anybody wins it's probably Elizabeth Warren. I mean, first of all, I think we all know that a woman would never be able to run for office like this if she'd posed nude for a magazine. It didn't seem to trouble people about Scott Brown. But I think what his problem is that his campaign is now saying that this is an example of how elitist Elizabeth Warren is because she didn't have to do something like that. And I kind of want their theme song to be that Donna Summer.
They're trying to bring it back to what happened 30 years now.
Right, exactly.
I want to know just your bottom line. Who won the back and forth when she took the opportunity to mention that he had posed naked for nude for Cosmopolitan years ago when he was in law school, and then he made the personal shot at her. Yeah. Who won in that exchange?
I think she did because his was personal.
Your thoughts on that, David Corn? Well, on that, we'll get back to the history part.
No. She won because he engaged in frat boy humor. And then he kind of said it was just a joke. It was a joke about what he thought about her appearance. Yeah. And, she was responding.
He was like a kid yelling at a dormatory window at some women walking by 10 years ago.
Thank God she didn't take off the clothes. We know what he meant. And then he can't really sort of fess up and say, that was, a bad remark on my part. And then it sort of is spinning into this debate about their respective biographies, which she wins as well.
Okay, let's get to the thing. Just to finish it up, Alex Wagner, is this just a case of a guy being gross? He's seizing an opportunity to be very unpleasant to a woman he should respect.
Look, Chris, I think this has gotten slightly blown out of proportion. There are calls for Scott Brown.
Not by us.
Well, I think, look, some organizations are calling for him to reconsider whether he should be running for a re-election, that he shouldn't have a place in the U.S. Senate. Okay. I think it's a basically tasteless joke, but I think in the end, of course, Elizabeth Warren wins. It underscores her tenacity, her strength. The fact that she can survive a couple of jabs from Scott Brown is an understatement.
Well, two female senators, women senators from the Northeast, obviously allies of Brown's, tried to shift the discussion. This is what you call spin. Yeah. Both statements shifted the focus from Brown's comment about Warren's looks, which everybody's been talking about, to how Brown made money back as a law student back 30 years ago. Kelly Elliott from New Hampshire said in part, quote, "It's inappropriate to make light of his personal circumstance or to disparage or belittle him for the decisions he made to improve his life." Well, that's special. And Maine Susan Collins said in part, quote, "It's wrong to mock anyone who had to make hard choices to overcome tough obstacles. His story is no different than millions of Americans are doing everything they can to make ends meet." It's so cute. I used to run the birthday concession at Holy Cross. I mean, this isn't about how you made money in college. No. This is about whether he's a frat boy and does he show a certain character problem by taking a shot at somebody about their physical appearance.
He did, and more importantly, afterwards, his campaign manager said, this is just an indication of Elizabeth Warren's elitist outlook.
Right.
She was looking from Harvard. She's looking down on a poor working class guy. This guy went to Tufts. He went to Boston College, which is a private school. She grew up as an Okie, in Oklahoma. Went to public schools. She has more of a working class background than he does, but they're trying to use the Harvard thing out of this against her.
Let's get back to your argument. Because you got an opportunity to make a larger statement. This is always tricky business. My friend Susan Milligan, you said that if a candidate for public office who was female had 30 years before had posed in a magazine, they would be disqualified from public. You absolutely believe that?
Absolutely.
Do you believe that, David, that she would be disqualified?
I think if we found naked pictures of Michelle Bachmann or Sarah Palin, but naked, if they're naked, naked is naked, Chris.
Okay.
I think they'd have a hard time, at least with their own constituency.
This is Friday around here. Let's go to the numbers right here. I'm always happy. Thank you, Court. My producer knows exactly where I want to go in these moments. Let's look at these. This is what I find freaking fascinating. Brown is 41-38 over somebody who's just come into politics, is not a politician.
Right.
He is one of the best pure quarterback. I'm not saying anything about his policies. He's a good pol. With the barber coat and the car and the truck. Come on, this guy's got all the apparatus.
You know what his problem is we can talk a lot about their supposed working class backgrounds and so forth, but the math is still very tough for him. He's still running in Massachusetts. You're asking a lot of people to pull the lever for Barack Obama and Scott Brown. I'm not sure it's going to happen. And the second thing is that she has an advantage. I think that in the first campaign, people were comparing Martha Coakley, who was a deeply flawed candidate, to Ted Kennedy or the memory of Ted Kennedy, and now Elizabeth Warren's
well, at least Scott Brown showed pictures of Jack Kennedy, whereas, what's her name? Martha Coakley pretended there had never been a Kennedy in the scene. It's absurdity. Alex Wagner, your thoughts about this? You come from a long pedigree of political people here. Your thought, I know your father.
So taking their clothes off to go through college,
exactly. But let's go back to the sheer politics, which we do better here than naked pictures. This question.
That's arguable.
Isn't it? Would you say this is the closest race to look like on paper? Is Scott Brown in as much trouble as being within the margin of error against an absolute newcomer?
Absolutely, Chris. And his favorability rating was sky high just months ago. Look, you combine with what's happening on Wall Street, the feeling of anger and frustration, and that the middle class has unduly borne the brunt of this economic recession, with the fighting that Elizabeth Warren has done and her record in Washington, fighting the banks, fighting to some extent the government. I mean, she is the candidate for right now.
So she could be the gutsy Joan of Arc up there that really says, I'm taking on the big guys.
She is the perfect Democrat. She has a populist background that is rooted in her own experience. It's not an academic experience the way she grew up. She understands big finance and can relate to little people or other average people.
She's got to get out of that Boston elite thing. They'll kill you, though.
Well, you know what? They took a poll and 13% said they were less favorably disposed to her because of the Harvard background. But that's a small number. I'm not sure you can. How do you
beat that, my friend, my fellow Irish woman here? How do you beat that rap of being part of the Boston elite wine and cheese, we're better than you crowd that drives most Massachusetts people crazy?
Well, first of all, as David has pointed out, she's the one who went to a public university and a public law school, and it's Scott Brown who went to the private schools. And she doesn't come from some kind of privileged background. What I think is remarkable is that we sit here and wring our hands over the state of education in this country and how kids aren't making their SAT scores. But going to Harvard has somehow
there's a difference between academic achievement and elitism, an attitude of looking down on people. And I'm better than you because I went there. You're allowed to go to the best schools in the country, but in this democratic society, don't act like it.
Yeah, but
don't act like you're better than other people.
So what does she have to do? Take off her clothes?
I don't know.
But
I'm asking.
But she is champion.
How about winning for once? That's what she has to do.
She's champion.
Well, then she'll be part of an elite group of 100 people.
She's very good at
crusading. It's the Dukakis problem. I'm sorry.
She's good at crusading and championing for the average consumer. She talks about these big issues in a way that people get, and she makes a connection. She will be great on the campaign trail. Scott Brown should be damn scared.
You're great. You are really good. You're a word healer. This guy is the best street corner pile. You got a bullhorn out there somewhere.
I'd be happy to manage her campaign.
I think you got it. Anyway, I like the way you talk.